On Tuesday, October the 15th, St. Leon Cultural Committee presented an evening with Rifat Bali, the author of Model Citizens of the State, the Jews of Turkey during the multi-party period. Mr. Ara Aras, coordinator of the cultural program at St. Leon, welcomed the guests and thanked the organizations that jointly sponsored the evening. He then introduced Mr. George Shirinian, the executive director of the International Institute for Genocide and Human Rights Studies, a division of the Zorian Institute.
I would also, of course, like to thank our co-sponsors who make this event and all our events possible at St. Leon. They are the ANC of New Jersey, the Armenian Network, NASSER, the New York ASA, Tekian Cultural Association, Tibravank Alumni, and the Zorian Institute. We're also very lucky to have with us George Shirinian of the Zorian Institute, which has underwritten the translation of the book and has done much more than that. George himself is an accomplished scholar, and his most recent book is the Asia Minor Catastrophe, which interweaves the Armenian and Greek genocides. Please join me in welcoming George.
Bali's work deals with the Armenian genocide from the perspective of its relevance to the Jewish community. As his book makes clear, the Turkish state denial of the Armenian genocide has been a major element in Turkish-Jewish and Turkish-Israeli relations. But that is not the only aspect of his book that interested us. He deals with the human rights aspects of the minorities in Turkey, particularly the treatment of the Jewish community, and Zorian is a human rights organization with educational and publication programs in that area. Finally, Zorian is also a research institute devoted to the study of diaspora and diaspora homeland relations. Bali's examination of the relations between the Jewish community in Turkey and Israel is a valuable insight in the challenges of diaspora minorities in trying to preserve their language, culture, and identity. It is with great pleasure that I introduce you to Mr. Rifat Bali.
Rifat Bali spoke about anti-Semitism in Turkey and forced Turkification of minorities, and stressed that Turkey's Muslim majority continue to look at its non-Turkish minorities, the Jews, the Greeks, the Armenians, not as Turks, but as people who are not entitled to the same privileges as its Muslim inhabitants. Minorities have always been considered unreliable and always been discriminated against. Minorities have also been closely monitored for any sign of divergence. And despite the demand that they thoroughly behave as Turks, they were never treated as such. Of great interest to the attendees of the evening were Dr. Rifat Bali's comments about the pressure Turkey puts on its Jewish community in Turkey, and through them on Jewish organizations in the United States to block U.S. recognition of the Armenian genocide. Jewish leaders agree that in the eyes of the Turkish Republic, they have no real significance in Turkey, apart from collaborating with the Turkish Foreign Ministry and various American Jewish organizations to block the annual resolutions submitted to Congress calling for official recognition of the Armenian genocide of 1915. It is of significance that recently the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, after decades of opposing these resolutions, declared that the events of 1915 were indeed tantamount to genocide.
American Greek organizations were cooperating in a way in the Congress. So the Turkish president at that time made an appeal to the leading businessmen association, telling them, you have to perform your duty as a citizen. Go to the states and tell them the just cause of Turkey. So make propaganda on behalf of Turkey, because all what we are hearing there, you are hearing there is lies. The Turks had and still has an exaggerated view of the power of the American Jewish organization. They think that America is run by the Jewish lobby, and the Turkish Jewish leadership just put more salt on this so that they could become more, let's say, useful for the Turks. They said, yes, they are very powerful, and we as Turkish Jews could induce them to come to our side and be our, let's say, supporters. At the end of the 70s, when all these people started to come here, another event happened, which was the state of Israel declared Jerusalem as its capital. Then Turkey immediately reduced its diplomatic representation in Israel to second secretary level. So this was a concern for the American Jewish Organization and for the state of Israel that something has to be done to restore the relationship to its former level, full ambassadorship. So it was also used as part of all these lobbying efforts. And Turkey used this. They said, well, if you support us in this fight in the Congress for for blocking these bills which are presented, we will, with time going on, restore our relationship.